And that's it. That's the only defense that you have to try to help yourself.
Okay, well, let's navigate this.
Tell other people, and hopefully they'll come along too. But don't expect more than 1 out of 100 to listen.
Well, earlier in the show, I read a London Telegraph headline here on air saying that the big French bank is basically telling their investors prepare for total, absolute economic collapse. And so we've gone from will the dollar die to when is it going to die? And we've gone from there could be a total collapse to when is the total collapse coming? Is there any way to navigate out of this? And what do you think the establishment is planning to do?
Well, I think we get a 1207 pass. We immediately start the audit of the Fed. We immediately see within 5 or 6 months what the Fed has been doing since 1913, which is looting the American public and enriching themselves with not only money, with power, and we get rid of them. And if we could accomplish that within a year and a half, then we would be able to go to the people and say, look, this is what the problem is. These are the guys that did it. This is why they did it. And this is why we're not going to put up with it anymore. And so this is what we're going to do. We're going to purge the system of all the losers, and we're going to have a depression. It'll probably last 3 to 5 years. It's going to be miserable. And we're going to do our best that we can to help everybody. But we've got to live through this, and there's no other way. And once it's cleared away, we'll be able to create a new and hopefully more vibrant America. And that's the only real chance that we have. And that's why this legislation was so important. It's the most important legislation perhaps in the last 100 years.
Absolutely, because it identifies the real problem. But
and the culprits.
The culprits, so we can remove the cancer that's already eaten us up, but if we don't go in and have this emergency surgery, we know it's over. If they stay in power, if they're not brought to justice, if they're able to carry this forced vertical integration, this looting through, what will things look like, and when do you think it's going to start descending into total bedlam?
Well, the devaluation of the dollar, which is probably a year and a half away, will be step number one. I would expect at that time or shortly thereafter, the injection of money and credit and monetization, the effect of that would start to wane, and we would have inflation perhaps of 30 or 50%, maybe a lot more. I try to be conservative because when you sometimes state facts, the things that could be facts, people don't want to believe you because it sounds so outrageous. Well, I've been living in an outrageous world for a long time. But anyway, that would be the catalyst, the beginning of the depression, so to speak. And then, we spend a tremendous amount of money on our military forces overseas and all of these things that they've got us involved in. That would cease because the money wouldn't be there to do that anymore. And then these people would be coming home, adding, 4 or 5 million people to the workforce. And at that time, we'd probably have 50 or 60 million unemployed. And that's not going to help. But there's not much we can do about that. I mean, we have to deal with the cards that we've been dealt. And, it's so true. My nephew's just retired as the assistant chief of police in a large city in America. And he always said to me, look, you deal with what you've got. You fight back with what you have. And that's all you can do as a human being. And he's right. And so that's what we have to do as a people. And we are a people. We're different than everybody else. We come from a warrior caste, people who came from all over Europe, and then they came from Asia, and then they came from Central and South America because they wanted better jobs and more freedom, and for some time they had that. But we have to deal with our problems that we've got that have been created by the people who call themselves our masters. Well, they're not our masters, and they're certainly not mine.
Well, Bob, I want to go back to the positive things we see that are happening. 2 years ago, they were worshipful of Fed chairmen, worshipful of Treasury heads, worshipful of Goldman Sachs heads. Now, Republicans and Democrats genuinely treat them with contempt, call them crooks, call them criminals. Rush Limbaugh is calling Al Gore a New World Order criminal. I actually have the transcript now. We need to play that next hour, the audio of that. And saying Al Gore is a criminal so the bankers, I have the transcript, so the bankers can take over our economy. I mean, whether Rush Limbaugh is good or bad, he's now being forced to actually come out and tell the truth, or he will lose all credibility and won't even be in the game anymore. I mean, we really, because you and others planted the seeds decades ago of truth.
We caused that. Absolutely, we caused it. And I think it's wonderful. And I want them on our side. And I want them telling the truth, because I want to get this thing over with before I kick the bucket.
Well, you're absolutely right, Bob. I mean, we really are affecting change, and we're in the battle. And I guess we've just got to be here and explain the bankers are the criminals. They've got to be brought to justice. Whatever solutions they give us are just more power for them. And as long as we just are the last men standing, telling the truth throughout this crisis, there's no way they're going to come out on the end of this, Bob.
That's right. And I knew that from the very beginning, for the same reason that you did. My favorite subject was history. And I read and read and read. I must have read the Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. That's 7 volumes. I must have read it 20 times. Because to me it was exciting. But I learned what the culture of people is.
Absolutely. We're going to take phone calls with Bob Chapman when we get back. And I'm going to find out if he's got other interviews coming up. Maybe I can twist his arm and stay a little bit with us into the next hour, and then ask Bob other issues he wants to talk about, what he thinks is important in the news. We haven't even gone there yet, but here it is. Société Générale tells clients how to prepare for potential global collapse.
From the company